Though his mind is not for him, don't put him down as arrogant. His reserve a quiet defense, writing out the day's events.
Is that still your opinion that with respect to the 2016 election, that the intrusions or attempted, whatever it is, Russians or others did not affect the actual voting itself?
Based on everything I know, that is correct. I know of no evidence that through cyber intrusions, votes were altered or suppressed in some way.
Jeh Johnson there. I keep wanting to call him Jeh Johnson, the former DHS secretary, testifying today in Washington that indeed, to his knowledge, not a single Russian vote was cast in the election last year to give Donald Trump extra votes over Hillary Clinton. That was the testimony today. I'm just playing you the soundbite. That's an Obama guy saying that, just in case your memory has failed you or you had too many margaritas already. Whatever the case may be, I just want to point that out. Speaking of which, Donald Trump has suggested on several occasions that there were millions of non-citizens voting, voter fraud, and he's even put together a commission or committee to look into it across the country. And the Democrats step back and say, there's no evidence of this, blah, 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 blah. And then we constantly are finding examples that indeed it did happen because we just don't have a very good system in this country to prevent it from happening. My guest right now is Jim Agresti. He's the president of Just Facts, and he and his team took an interesting look at past U.S. elections and the number of non-citizens that have voted in those elections. And I invited Jim on today so we could talk a bit more about the methodology and how you arrived at these numbers. Jim, how are you?
Great. Thanks for having me on, Mark.
Well, thanks for giving us a few minutes today. Maybe you can explain to my listeners how you reached this conclusion about the 2008 election.
Sure. So on a regular basis, YouGov, the polling company, polls a massive sample of the U.S. population. And just as regularly, the Harvard University CCES polling team aggregates that data to make it representative of the U.S. population. So back in 2014, the Journal of Electoral Studies looked at the non-citizen respondents to this poll and basically calculated some numbers based on their responses as to how many voted. And what we simply did is we looked at the primary source data and we just aggregated it and added it up, and we came out, once you add in margins of sampling errors, anywhere from 600,000 to 5.7 million non-citizens voted in the 2008 presidential election.
So these are polls taken post-election where non-citizens have been polled on how they voted?
Well, yes, the whole U.S. population, over 30,000 people actually, or 50,000, were polled. And there was a certain subset among those people that said, we're non-citizens, and by the way, we voted. And by the way, this is who we voted for.
Wow. So I know that the headlines grabbed the 5.7 million number, but you gave me a range of 600,000 to 5.7 million. What do you think the real number likely is?
Well, I think it's somewhere in the middle, obviously, between those. Probably, the further you get from the middle, the less of a chance of it is being right. And also, this isn't all of the uncertainty that's inherent in this analysis. As we lay out on our website, justfacts.com, in any study like this, there has to be certain assumptions. And what you have to do is make sure your assumptions are plausible. And I think we've done that. We've documented why we use the assumptions we did. So they're plausible. Are they ironclad? No. But the people who are saying, certain scholars who are saying, oh, no non-citizens voted, they are using assumptions, again, which we document on our website, that are absolutely absurd. They're trying to claim that people who said, I voted, and by the way, this is who I voted for, didn't vote unless they appear in a certain database that doesn't even capture the majority of non-citizens. So they're saying if they're not in this database, we're not going to count them. Well, that's ridiculous. 60% of non-citizens in your poll aren't in the database at all.
Right. Yeah, I've raised this question before. I've raised it with our Secretary of State here in Missouri and others I've talked to. We've seen examples across the country, most recently down in Dallas, where a lady was sent to jail after she switched from one county to another. She moved, and she went in to register to vote, and she realized that she'd been voting illegally because she checked the box that said she was a U.S. citizen. Well, she had permanent residency, but she wasn't a citizen. And when I start questioning these election directors on this, they'll all admit that when that voter registration comes in, there's not a background check that's done to confirm that whoever filled it out is a United States citizen. They're just simply added to the voter rolls.
You're absolutely correct. And shortly before the 2016 U.S. presidential election, Barack Obama sat for an interview with actress Gina Rodriguez. And she said, I call the Dreamers citizens, even though they're non-citizens, right? They're illegally present, too. I call them citizens so that they can because they contribute to society. And then she said, can't they vote or they're going to get in trouble? And while Obama did not say they can vote, this is what he said, quote, word for word, there is not a situation where the voting rolls somehow are transferred over and people start investigating, meaning your background, your immigration status. So there's no mechanism in place to catch this. The National Voter Registration Form does not require people to prove they are U.S. citizens. And when a couple of states before this latest election, namely Kansas, Alabama, and Georgia, started a system to verify the citizenship of people in order to vote, the Obama administration supported a court injunction to prevent them from doing this. Mm-hmm. So there's no real mechanism in place to stop this or to really measure it super accurately.
And you've got places like California giving driver's license to illegal residents, and then states like Illinois that want to automatically register you to vote when you get a driver's license. So
Dad, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I think it's a system that's rife for exactly the situation you've described here.
One thing that is required for voter registration is some form of identification. You mentioned California, and just this year, the California Senate leader and Democrat Kevin De Leon testified before the Senate's Public Safety Committee, and this is what he said. I can tell you half of my family would be eligible for deportation under Trump's executive order, because if they've got a false Social Security card, if they got a false identification, if they got a false driver's license, if they got a false green card, and anyone who has family members who are undocumented knows that almost entirely everybody has secured some sort of false identification.
Yeah.
That's all you need to vote, and every one of them has it.
Yeah, that's a great point. Jim Agresti, I'm running out of time here. Tell people where they can go to find out more about your study.
JustFacts.com. Click on the immigration research, and then in the navigation menu, click down into electoral issues.
We'll put a link to it on our website. Jim Agresti, thank you for your time.
Thanks for